question of hope and the miracles of Jesus. And when I look for the kind of problem that stands behind this question of hope, I'm zeroing in on the notion of anxiety, or as the Germans say, Angst. And I want to describe that a bit to try to work us into this question of the search for hope. Anxiety has been a great theme of the 19th and 20th century thinkers. It goes back to people like Kierkegaard, and is big in people like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre, talking about the anxieties of life. And by that, they distinguish anxiety off against fear. Fear has a particular object, so we might be afraid of heights, for example, or afraid of speaking in public, or afraid to meet people. We can have all kind of fears like that, and it's easy to identify the object and then to try to figure out how we might overcome that. A lot of the behavioral people talk like that. They will gradually, people who have fear of water, they will gradually immerse them in water, help them to overcome it that way. They might have them imagine themselves in water, swimming along, and so on. So there's a lot of techniques that we learn from the psychotherapists of how to deal with our fears. But when the philosophers and psychologists are talking about anxiety, they're talking about something else. Anxiety is that which has no particular object. It is a feeling that things are not right, but I don't know why. It's like you wake up in the morning and you're just nervous and not thrilled about facing the day, but you don't know exactly what it is. I mean, you're not afraid of doing the wash that day or cooking a meal, or there doesn't appear to be anything in the way, and yet one feels this vague kind of uneasiness about life. And so we often say that the real object of anxiety, as over against fear, is nothingness, or no thing at all. And so we try to figure out then, well, what is it that goes on inside of us? One of the great students of Paul Tillich was Rollo May, a psychotherapist. Some people know his work through Love and Will and so on. He's written a great work on anxiety. Did his doctoral dissertation on that, and when he talked to Paul Tillich, Tillich said, I want you to learn everything there is to know about anxiety. And so he's pulled together a whole lot of ideas around this whole theme. And it appears as though one way of looking at anxiety is that it is simply what happens when we realize that we are finite in relationship to the infinite. It's what happens when we feel we are contingent, when we don't have to be here. We don't have control over the fact that we're here. In fact, in a way, we could be struck down immediately. We could die tomorrow. We don't have control over the deepest, most important things in life. We are floating around. We are dependent. We are contingent creatures. And it seems as though when we feel that, then it creates in us a deep sense of unease or dis-ease. A sense that maybe we can't cope, maybe we're not up to all of this. Sometimes anxiety seems to be produced in relationship to time. That is, when we imagine long periods of time, or perhaps for some of us in middle age, when we seem to be in the image I often use, hurtling towards that barrier we call death, so that we don't have any control over that time factor. It seems to be going faster than we would like. Kids are growing up. They're bigger than I thought. They're going off to college pretty soon. What are we going to do? Part of that seems to trigger this thing we're calling angst, or anxiety, sense that I don't have control. For many people, I suppose, in the modern world, space has done this, to learn the immensity of space. What a tiny speck we are in this whole universe. You know, I often think, I've repeated this often, Carl Sagan picking up those grains of sand and saying there's more worlds out there than there are grains of sand on all the beaches on our earth. You know, when you begin to think, you know, how tiny we are in relationship to this vast, almost incomprehensible universe in which we exist. And what it has done for many people is create a sense of smallness, like, well, what are we? Do we matter at all? Do we fit in any place? I mean, how could in this vast whole thing, do we really amount to anything? Are we of any value? Do we have any real home? I think oftentimes that's connected with a sense of homelessness, this business of space. Do I really belong someplace? Am I really rooted any place? Do I feel as though I'm comfortable in my space? No, I mean, the home has great emotional feeling this way, doesn't it? The place where we grew up, or the place that's secure and set. We know our routines in our home. People like to stamp the home, shape it, then it becomes theirs because it helps them to stave off anxiety, helps us to know who we are and where we fit. So space is part of what goes on with the whole business of angst or anxiety. And then also I would relate it to causality. That is, to the question of, well, where did I come from? Or I didn't make myself to be. I had no control over the fact that here I am living in the 20th century. I might have lived some other time. I don't control my energy source in a way. It seems to me to be beyond me. Again, there's a feeling very often that one is floating around. I suppose the philosopher who has captured so much of this in the 19th century was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche is the one who talked about the death of God, and when God dies, then everything is opened up. And he has this marvelous passage of the madman coming to the marketplace, and he says, I'm looking for God. And they laugh at him. They say, looking for God? What happened? Did you lose him? And the madman says, representing Nietzsche, no, I didn't lose him. I'll tell you what happened. He's dead. God is dead, and we have killed him. And who will wipe the blood from our hands now? And then the madman goes on to say, now that God is dead, the earth is unchained from the sun. Now we don't know up from down. Now we are simply floating around in a vast cosmos. There's no ordering principle, nothing of stability. We feel at loose ends because God is dead, Friedrich Nietzsche said. Well, Nietzsche was prophetic. Nietzsche had a feeling for what was going to happen in the 20th century when people would be taken over more and more by angst or anxiety. And so it is that very often this deeper anxiety then leads to other kind of problems in life. You understand, I'm trying to describe what I think is at the very bottom of the malaise we would feel, of the dis-ease with life, the lack of comfort. It's not, again, a particular object. It's a fear of no thing, of nothingness, of contingency, of the fact that I don't control. But it seems that out of that deeper experience comes other more familiar experiences that we might well go through, like depression, which would be described more as a psychological state. We all know something of depression. We don't feel like we can do anything. We lose our energy level. We're tired. Nothing interests us. Feel like we got the blahs. We wonder if it's ever going to end. And maybe that becomes a little more surface kind of expression of this deeper thing that we were calling anxiety, and all of which, of course, sets up this question of hope for us. I suppose maybe at an even milder level, we might find discouragement. You know, geez, are these kids going to turn out or not? You know, am I going to make it through school or not? Am I going to be able to manage things? Geez, I'm not getting any place. My best pet projects are failing. My friends have not been as responsive as I would like. I feel generally discouraged about life. Well, all of us recognize that. Generally, we feel, well, we could manage that. We figure how to deal with these discouragements. I guess, finally, in this analysis that I'm trying to do, we might draw in as well the notion of despair. when things just simply seem out of control, when the walls cave in, when one is at the bottom of the pit and one says there doesn't appear to be any way out. There is no opening for me, no way to finally get myself together again. Despair. And that's what comes with the phone call, you see. But, Father, I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, I can't handle this. I'm afraid of what I'm going to do. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid that I'm going to commit suicide. There's no other way out for me. So we might factor in as well this whole business of despair. Well, all of that, I suppose, sets the stage for any realistic talk about hope. The existentialist philosopher Gabriel Marcel once said that you'll never know hope unless you've known despair. Or maybe I could paraphrase that tonight and say we would never know the deepest meaning of hope unless we are somehow in touch with angst, with anxiety, with the deepest kinds of problems that lurk at the center of our being. And so it seems as though we need to zero in on that before we would be able to appreciate what hope might be all about. Well, I'm going to take a usual break here for a moment. I'm going to invite just a couple seconds. I got to remember, I'm not lecturing for 2 hours on this, am I? I'm supposed to be compressing into 2 units. Let's take a minute break. I invite you to sort of just quietly yourself think about this business of anxiety and whether you can recognize that in yourself. This whole thing I've been talking about is angst. Just 1 minute for that. Able to sense at all that particular problem, I'd like to tell you a story now and see how that affects this problem of anxiety or despair, depression, discouragement. It's a story of a father whose son has been ill from childhood, and his son has these terrible convulsions. And his son sometimes takes himself and just throws himself on the ground or into a fire, into water and so on. And the father is just at his wit's end about knowing what to do about this. And he has tried everything. He's taken him to all of the kind of medical help that's available and so on. No one can help his son. He sits down and he tries to talk to him. What's the problem? What's going on? The young man is unable to do anything by way of progress. And so one day the father has heard about this group of people following this rabbi from Nazareth. And so he found this little group, and when he got there he was very disappointed because there was only part of the group there and the leader wasn't around. And so he asked those people, he says, hey, I hear that you people, help others out, that you do healing and so on. And so the disciples, this group said, there was 9 of them there, they said to him, well, okay, we're going to try to work on this here. So they tried to help this young man, and to no avail. Couldn't help him at all. And just then, they spot the rest of their group coming. There's Peter, James, and John over there, and yep, there's the rabbi, the master with them. And they're coming back. And they look like they're really excited. They had known they had gone up on the mountain. You could tell by looking at them that something important had happened. And as they got closer, the father went over and talked to Jesus, and he said, my son, I need help for my son. It's terrible. He's just got these convulsions. He throws himself down, and he might do it into the fire, throw himself into water. I need help. I asked your followers here to help him, and they haven't been able to do anything for him. And Jesus looks at him and he says, hey, you guys ever going to learn? Oh, where's your faith? And then Jesus addressed the little boy there, the young man, and he said to the spirit, mute and dumb spirit, come out of him. And the boy at that just fell down on the ground. He went in, everyone thought he was dead. He was laying there, wasn't moving. All thought that he was dead. And then Jesus raised him up and said, well, he wasn't dead. He was all right. He was fine. And the father was so grateful for this. See his son restored to health. Jesus then started talking to his followers. They said, well, why couldn't we do that? Well, why couldn't we accomplish this? And Jesus tells them, this is a matter of faith. You have to have faith to accomplish this kind of thing. And you have to be ready to pray. You have to have prayer in order to achieve this kind of healing. Well, that's a story here from the Gospel of Mark. That's from the 9th chapter. Story of the possessed boy. That kind of demon, Jesus said, you can drive out only by prayer. Well, that's a typical miracle story that the evangelists have given us. We have all those other miracle stories, and very often they have to do with healing like that. Now, the contention tonight in the class is that somehow that story can touch us and tell us something about how to deal with despair and anxiety and help us to be people of hope. Now, you could just stop there, I suppose, and ponder the story. You could think of the meaning of it. You could let it react on yourself. You could go back and read Mark's Gospel. Maybe that's the best thing for some people to do. But it also might be helpful to sort of analyze the story, to try to figure out what those miracles of Jesus are all about and how they would help us indeed to overcome the anxiety that I tried to describe. One of the first things, if you start to analyze it, is you have to keep it in perspective. Now, you have to remember even what Mark said. He had what he called the discipline of the secret. You ever notice that so often when Jesus does a miracle, Mark says, now don't tell anybody about this. And what Mark was trying to do with that is play down those miracles. He wanted to tell his people, hey, don't get hung up on this thing. Don't think that everybody's going to get cured like this. Don't think every time you say a prayer that everything's going to turn out all right. Because there were people in Mark's community that thought like that. And so he had to make sure they knew differently. But that wasn't the deepest meaning of the miracle. It wasn't that everybody was going to suddenly get healed, or you say enough prayers and all the sick people are going to be taken care of. That's not the meaning of it. It's deeper than that. It has to do with Jesus' power to give us this hope even in the midst of anxiety. Not to take the angst away, but to help us to figure out how to manage it, how to deal with it. There's no doubt in the New Testament that Jesus is portrayed as a miracle worker. One of the ways we know that for sure, that Jesus actually historically was a miracle worker, that even his enemies did not deny that. His enemies attacked him on many grounds. Even, for example, that he was illegitimate. An illegitimate son, therefore he couldn't have been the Messiah. But they did not attack the fact of miracles. They admitted that. But they had an alternate explanation. They said, his enemies that is, that he works these miracles by the power of Beelzebul, the prince of darkness, the prince of demons. They knew he cured people. They just claimed he got his power from demonic forces and not from God. So there is really no doubt that in Jesus' own ministry he was a miracle worker. And I think of it very often, not as a showy thing, but much more of a compassionate response to individual needs. Peter's mother-in-law is lying there with a fever. Jesus enters the house, reaches over, touches her, and cures her. It's not like, hey, let's get a big crowd together here, gang, and we're going to work this really neat miracle. That's a temptation. That's what the devil wanted to do. Go up into Jerusalem with a big crowd, get in the top of the temple, and jump down and don't get hurt. Then you'll have something that people will be talking about. Well, Jesus didn't do that. I have much more the sense that he worked miracles to go over and touch and heal ad hoc in a situation as it was demanded as he went along. The other thing I think we should see about miracles in the New Testament is that they are not seen as the breaking of the laws of nature. That's part of the quote that I had to read at the beginning, which maybe was a little more difficult than some of the other quotes I've had to read in the past. But it is indicated that miracles are not, first of all, the breaking of the laws of nature. They were, in the New Testament, seen as signs. Signs of what? The coming of the kingdom. Symbols of the presence of the hand of God. Striking reminders that God's power and goodness is stronger than all of the evil that might be at work in the world. So the miracles are signs, symbols, and not so much breaking the laws of nature. Also, it seems as though miracles, whether in New Testament times or other times, have a power to touch only the people who are looking with the right perspective or the right angle of vision. I use this example so often, I'll repeat it again. Many of you have heard me say it before, but it is so striking to me, it helps make the point. You take the events of 1250 B.C., and the Israelites are slaves in Egypt. And suddenly, they're no longer slaves in Egypt. They're out and away. And so you ask an Egyptian what happened, and he said, we've had the worst luck lately. We've had more flies than you can believe. There's frogs all over the place. Nile River is so muddy you can't even drink it. And besides that, the Pharaoh's son dies, and that crummy group of slaves use the chance to get away. Now, who's going to build our pyramids for us? You grab an Israelite and say, what happened? Same event, and he says, what happened? Yahweh has been at work. The great God sent plagues on those Egyptians. He sent a plague of frogs and flies, and he turned the Nile River into blood. He parted the waters. He took the firstborn in every family. And he helped us to pass out here into the land flowing with milk and honey. Yahweh has been at work. So, it's my way of saying about miracles that miracles have a whole lot to do with the way we interpret events. That the ability to see miracles is connected with faith. Some people just say, well, that's an accident. That just happened. Other people see the same complex bringing together of events and say, there is the hand of God present. There is a miracle. That is, for me, a sign of the power and goodness of the great God. Rousseau once said, if God wanted to speak to me, then why did he speak to Moses? We might say the same thing today. If God wants to stir up our faith through miracles, then how come he worked them all back then, and why doesn't he work some now? Well, I think the answer to that question is that indeed those same kinds of events that we name miraculous are still going on now. And it's still a question of whether we have the eyes, the angle of vision, the perspective to be able to see those. As a matter of fact, we've had a great interest in such things in our own time, in healings, for example. A whole lot of talk of healing and situations where people have gotten their health back with no apparent medical causality that one could identify. Mysterious kinds of things. And not only that kind of thing, but the small events that occur in life that become for us what I call the intimations of hope, the clues that the power of goodness is greater than the power of evil, that are all around us in simple kinds of ways. And it seems that one is trying to do is get attuned to those happenings. So I find the miracles in my own life. Here's someone that I thought I could never get along with again, that the breach in our relationship was simply too great. And here suddenly, in ways I never could understand, this person is now responsive. Now we've got a chance. Now we're working it out. Now we're friends again. I can't believe it. By no human causality could I ever figure that this would work. This must be the workings of the Spirit here, that we have reconciled this relationship. This would be able to help us to see the miraculous in our own time. So, talking about the miracles, in this course we're dealing with Karl Rahner, and much of what I'm telling you is his own analysis of what miracles are all about. What that takes us to, I suppose, is how those miracles then are supposed to influence us. What sort of stance are we supposed to come up with then in life? How are we supposed to be able to look at human existence then if this miracle is beginning to shape our consciousness? Well, I would think that first of all it means that we are people who sort of have an adventuresome spirit about life, a sort of open attitude to new and surprising things, sort of an emotional set that helps me to see the positive things and not just look at the negative. To be able to see in other people their talents rather than their failings. To be able to look at my day at the end and say, hey, there's a lot of good things that happened here. It would help me to move into my day with a sense that, well, maybe I can manage it. A lot of times, I wake up in the morning and that's when I have angst. My angst time is in the morning when I first get up. Well, other people have angst attacks them at night, but nights are good. They're all right, but it's that morning. And it's a question then, that angst, that demon, how am I going to get through this day? How am I going to manage? How can I get into gear here? And I think part of what hope is supposed to do, what of the message of Jesus, what prayer to Jesus is supposed to do, is to get me to, not that the feeling goes away, not that suddenly I don't feel angst, but I can manage anyway. I can still see that first person today, even though I'm feeling that in my guts, and I'll get through it. I'll manage it. I'll think of something. Somehow something new and surprising will happen here. That would be part, I think, of what I'm talking about, is this adventuresome sort of outlook. The other thing that I would want the hope to do for me is to help organize my activities, to give me a sense of purpose and meaning in my life, so that my hopeful attitude as I'm trying to get going throughout that day is that, there's some focus to all of this. There's some deeper meaning in it. If I can overcome these demons today, somehow I'll be a better person because of it. Somehow I'll be responsive to the call of God if I can just not let the anxiety paralyze me today. So it has that kind of sense to it. And I think also the kind of hope that I want to talk about that results from the miracles of Jesus has a conviction, sort of an intellectual side to it, that says that, well, I know what I'm going to do with my life. I have a plan. It's not a naive optimism. Hope is not the same as thinking, well, everything will go beautifully today. I'll get through this day easily. It's not that. It's that despite the troubles, despite the mistakes I make, despite the anxiety that's gnawing at my guts right now, I know that somehow there is a way to manage. Somehow I understand what life is about. I've got a fix on it. I've got enough perspective on it. I've gotten through it before, and I know that I can do it again today. And the psychologists say that's one of the most important ways of dealing with anxiety or even our fears at a lesser level. That is the sense that I've made it before, the sense that I have been able to manage in the past. So maybe when I look at my day, then I'm trying to see these miracles of Jesus, then I'm trying to say they should make me to be a person of hope. Or as Paul Tillich liked to phrase it, not so much a person of hope, but a person of courage. Courage to Be is the name of one of his books on this whole question. So that I have the courage and the hope to be able to say, yes, I can manage throughout this day. That hope, the miracles of Jesus, are a sign of the kingdom's presence. And what that means is that Jesus Christ is here. His power and grace are present in the world, already in our midst, doing little things, touching the world in small ways, but that kingdom is not yet complete. The perfect world of grace and righteousness, shalom and peace will come only at the end time. The miracles of Jesus and the miracles we find in our own life are signs of that current presence of grace, and also reminders to us that one day all will be right, that the good will win out over the evil, that we'll all live in peace and harmony and communion. It is what we like to call a total hope. Not just I'm going to get through today, angst has got me in the morning, but I'll make it through, and I make it through and I say, good, thank God. No, maybe tomorrow will be better. But not just that, hope for a day. What the miracles of Jesus say is a total hope that in my whole life there is this deeper meaning, that the whole of my existence is going someplace, that it's all worthwhile, that there's a final victory, there's a satisfaction of the deepest longings of my heart. So that the little hopes given to us by the miracles of Jesus are also a sign of this greater hope, that despite everything, despite all the sickness, all the suffering, the death that our loved ones must endure, the death that we must endure, that somehow there is hope that the good wins out, that anxiety does not have the last word. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to ask you to talk one-to-one for a minute. And I want you to respond at two levels. I'd like you to try, first of all, to try to say to the person next to you what the miracle story, the father wanting the cure for his son and so on, what that might do for you. And then I'd like you to spend a little after that, try to check out the explanation I gave or some of the analysis and see if any one of those points struck home to you. So let's take a couple minutes to do that now. Why don't we see if people have questions that relate to the topic so far. I might call your attention to a number of things. The people who are doing this for some sort of credit, religious ed credit, the forms are in the back, and I was asked to announce if you would please write on it whether you're getting this for advanced elective or advanced spirituality or an advanced scripture thing. So you're supposed to put on there what it's what the credits that you're getting are for. Mind with that. Let's see if there are questions now that arise around this question of miracles or directions that we should look at here. Well, I don't know if you can say, totally, about a whole profession if they're thinking about that sort of thing. I think it's mixed. And I'm sure there's different reactions to that kind of thing, like, I don't understand it, maybe something else is at work, maybe very religious people see the hand of God. I mean, I think it's, it comes down to the outlook, the philosophy, the theology, worldview that an individual would have. I mean, they did this film at St. Vincent's Hospital. Have people seen it when Father McNutt did the curing? And have people seen that film? You know? I mean, I have seen it a number of years ago, but it was about a woman, as I recall, it was in St. Vincent's Hospital, and they took films of this thing, you know, and they had a group that prayed for her regularly, and that was, and she was gradually cured. I forget what her problem was, you know, and there it was on the movie, you know, before your eyes as they're doing all of this. You know, the question becomes again, what do you make of that sort of thing? Well, I mean, one thing that is surely possible to say that we know that a whole lot of factors go into healing, emotional, psychological factors. I mean, much of what you read these days, Norman Cousins' work, An Anatomy of an Illness, people know his things. You know, he was cured of an illness he watched funny movies in his room. I mean, it was part of his therapy, and was somehow brought him out. Well, I think this business of praying for people, laying on of hands and so on, I mean, I have no doubt that has a curative power. You know, I don't know the dynamics in any physiological kind of way, but I think there's a common sense notion that when we're supported, we're sort of liberated to let our body do whatever it can do by way of curing itself. I don't think we have to think of those things again as the breaking of the laws of nature. One of our problems is we don't know all the laws of nature. I mean, we don't know how this world of ours exactly works together. But I mean, I don't have any doubt at all that there are cures like that. You know, now what the dynamics are is another question, but you see people get better. I mean, you have all these imagining sorts of exercises people playing these days about connected with cancer therapy and so on. You know, what to make of all of that? Well, I think one thing I think is that we have all kinds of powers that we haven't tapped, all kinds of abilities that we're not in touch with yet. I guess I sort of feel like the people who have more ESP, I mean, let's take average population. You see, some people are more sensitive than others. Some people are more aware than others. Well, why can't you imagine some people being still more aware and possessing sort of abilities that way that go far beyond what most of us possess? Oh, and why can't one think of a group of people praying over an individual who is sick, and that kind of support and encouragement there makes the person feel better, their emotional life comes together, whatever curative powers there are in the body maybe are unleashed and so on. So yeah, I mean, these things happen. I just don't have any doubt about all of that. But, what the dynamics are, I don't think anybody really knows at this point. And I don't think we have to say that what is happening is God is intervening and doing something, breaking the laws of nature here. I don't think that that's true. That's one of the points, of course, Rahner is trying to make in that quote that I gave you there from him, is that we don't have to see it that way because we don't know the full potential of nature. We don't know how matter and spirit work together. We don't know what full powers there are at work in the world. And so maybe what prayer is doing in these cases is unleashing that. Maybe Jesus had a tremendous power to make people have confidence, make them feel good about themselves, make them be open to the full workings of the Spirit. It always says in the Gospels, doesn't it? The miracles are worked always out of faith. Jesus goes to Nazareth, to his hometown, and suddenly the boy wonder can't come through. He can't work any miracles there. And the Scriptures say the reason is because the people saw him as so ordinary. They say, isn't he the carpenter? This guy's a carpenter. So they didn't have faith in him, and therefore the Gospel says he couldn't work any miracles. which suggests to us that the real dynamic that was going on always was faith. You have to have the faith before this kind of thing is able to be done, or in the context that we're talking about, before we can see what is happening. And again, there's always a counterpoint to that. I had a strong feeling of this at a charismatic conference at Notre Dame many years ago. And it's I don't know, thousands of people, was it 30,000 people in the football stadium and so on. And there was a healing mass, and there were many bishops celebrating and so on, and the whole place was ringed with people in wheelchairs. You know, I mean, there's people who couldn't walk. I mean, you know, and I had the most point, at one point in the Mass, the bishops came down and the priests were celebrating and blessed these people. You know, now that's, you know, a marvelous thing to have, but you have to keep it in the context that Mark's gospel keeps it in. That if someone came there saying, geez, I hope I can get up out of this wheelchair now after this Mass, and then they can't get up after the Mass, and I didn't see anyone really stand up at that point, well, and then they're sitting there saying, geez, I must be a bad person, or I must not have faith, or I must be a sinner because I can't get up. That would be a terrible thing to happen. You know, I mean, I really felt that there were some people like that there. But then they would feel more guilty and worse and so on. So I believe that that's not a good way to think about the miracles and so on. I'm thinking of Flannery O'Connor, the American Catholic short story writer. So I have a friend wanted to go to Lourdes. She had lupus. Remember, she ended up dying at the age of 39, had lupus. And Flannery O'Connor said something about she didn't really want to go there. She's afraid that a miracle would be worked, and she would be really embarrassed about it. You know, I mean, Flannery O'Connor, if you've read her stuff, she is the most sober realist you can find. But she finally, they did talk her into going to Lourdes, and it was a nice, you know, experience and so on for her. She didn't get cured of lupus. I mean, I remember in visiting Lourdes, it's always seemed to me the real miracle there was the charity that exists. I mean, people pulling these sick people around in these carts, and the comradeship and the community that was formed and so on. That struck me. I mean, I didn't see anybody jump up out of one of those things. If they did, it wouldn't surprise me in any real sense, but that wasn't what happened. Generally, to me, the real miracle was that people could overcome their barriers, their estrangement from the handicapped and the ill, and could become more caring, compassionate kind of people in this situation. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, Flannery O'Connor and Lourdes. I mean, Flannery was not big on miracles. I mean, she thought, you know, you had to slug your way through life and don't expect any miracles. That's part of what Mark was trying to get the people of his time to see. You know, the one shouldn't be expecting. So what you've got, you see, is a dialectic here again, in which we are to be on alert for the good things God is doing, try to sharpen our vision, be able to see the good side of things, try to be open, confident, adventuresome kind of people who are working out and for a better future. And on the other side, we have to be ready to deal with the hardships, the sicknesses, the illnesses, and the anxieties that are part of life, knowing somehow that the Lord is with us in that process. So it seems to me it's a very delicate kind of thing to maintain psychologically, especially when a loved one is sick, for example. You know, it's a very difficult. That's what Karl Rahner said, that, you know, the important thing was that the first prayer always had to be, thy will be done. First, we have to be able to say, Lord, I accept. Lord, I'll try to deal with whatever is real here. Then, once we establish that fundamental attitude, then you could pray for any kind of miracle you wanted. Please heal this person. Please help them. Then you could have any kind of petitions, full-blown, strong. Lord, I believe. Help me. Try, to pray for this miracle. But first has to be that general sense of acceptance that would be crucial to the whole project. Is that one question?